From demanding several changes to his character, to refusing to show up on set unless he's happy with John's fate, here's what Taylor Sheridan has revealed about why Kevin Costner hated Season 2. Now, Season 2 was a while ago, so you might need to jog your memory for this one. But according to Taylor, Kevin wasn't happy with the direction his character, John Dutton, was going in that season. And man, did he make his criticisms loud and clear to everyone in the production team. Sheridan said Costner didn't like the fact that his character was out doing immoral things, like having people killed. To Kevin, the main aspects of John's character should have been about his commitment to family values and his inability to change with the times. In the end, these aspects of his character would be the reasons for his downfall. And while that sounds interesting, Yellowstone's showrunner had a different idea of where the character could go. Sheridan wanted the character to take a more villainous route, with him possibly doing crazier things for the ranch with each passing season. Taylor even described the series as The Godfather, but set in the largest ranch in Montana. And I can't help but agree that the idea certainly has a nice ring to it. But while it could have been fun, Costner wasn't on board with it. And well, when you've got a star like him working on your show, sometimes you have to give in to his demands. And so, the writers and Sheridan sort of rewinded the character's Season 2 developments, with Season 3's John Dutton being similar to what Kevin had wanted. Though I've got to say, Sheridan's idea would have been better for the long term. If you've kept up with the latest seasons of the show, you'll know that one of the biggest complaints from fans is that the newer seasons tend to be a bit repetitive. The thing is, when you're constantly droning on about your family values and how you're not going to change with the times, it starts to get a bit boring. Now imagine if instead of having these same tired storylines, Yellowstone raised the stakes, with John going deeper into his web of crimes, in an attempt to keep his ranch safe. Eventually they could show that he's gone so far that his own family starts to fear his actions and realize that they need to stop him. It'd make John Dutton one of the most iconic characters on TV, and the series could have rivaled the likes of Breaking Bad. John might have even become Montana's very own Walter White. But I suppose Kevin wasn't happy with the show turning him into a villain and wanted the character to remain a positive part of the show. But hey, Costner might have had a point. And this storyline could have been a bit too much for a series like Yellowstone. The fact that Sheridan and the writers eventually decided to listen to him and steered back to their original vision of John means that they agreed with the star on some level. And let's not forget that the reviews of the season at the time pointed this out too. While it was generally received positively by fans, there were still folks who felt like the villainous shift in John was a little out of left field.
I suggest you start being my friend again, big fella, because as you can see, the walls are closing in on all sides.
Especially when you compare it to the almost corny modern-day Western stuff the rest of the series had to offer. During the season, John's actions led to innocent people getting killed, and let's not even dive into the fact that he was a part of actual white slavery on his ranch. Now, this portrayal of the character could have worked, but it was clear that the writers weren't sure if they wanted to go all the way with him. He wasn't a Tony Soprano-like character. Instead, most reviews mentioned that the character felt like he should have been the show's hero. But the fact that he was doing things you wouldn't expect from a good guy meant that the target audience was starting to get a bit of a mixed message about how they should feel about him, especially when the show started to portray John Dutton as some sort of victim, with the Native American characters being the aggressors in a cattle-based armed standoff. I'm sure criticism like this would have only gotten worse if the show doubled down on this take of John Dutton, which is why it might have been for the better, for them to move away from it, in favor of a more traditional and likable main character. This makes me think that Sheridan really should have listened more to Kevin's advice, because he understood John more than the writers. After all, when you spend so much time acting as a character, a part of the actor's own personality and traits get mixed into the portrayal. Kevin probably didn't want John to become a full-on murderer because he just couldn't see himself playing that sort of role. So, he was in the right to get it changed, since it might have saved the show from going down a much worse path. Though this isn't the only time the star has offered his advice to the showrunner. Costner would often share his thoughts on some scenes and how they could be changed for the better. But the star didn't really feel like he was given the respect he deserved behind the scenes. At one point, Sheridan even told him to stick to acting, essentially telling the star to keep his mouth shut. That's super disrespectful, especially when you consider the legendary status that Kevin has. Plus, let's not forget that he wasn't just some actor on the show. he served as an executive producer too, so he definitely had the right to suggest changes if he felt like it. But it seems Sheridan didn't like his actors making better writing decisions than he did. And so, after feeling like Kevin was starting to show him up a bit too much, he told the star to learn his place, which led to some serious beef between the two. In fact, they haven't even spoken to each other for months. It seems that Kevin's hate for the second season eventually turned into his hate for the show as a whole. Even though he tried to make the series his own by trying to play a role in its production as much as possible, Sheridan wasn't willing to give up control. The showrunner wanted to be the one pulling the strings, even though he already has a dozen spin-off shows where he could make the writing choices for himself. But that's not enough for him, I guess. And so Costner pulled away his attention from Yellowstone and instead started focusing on some of his other projects. The biggest of which is his Horizon film series, which is currently in production. Now, to dedicate more time to this film, which, keep in mind, consists of 4 entire movies, which Costner is set to write, produce, direct, and act in himself. Kevin asked to have his time on Yellowstone reduced, but it seems neither Paramount nor Sheridan were especially eager about that, and so they started fighting with each other for months. Because of this, Kevin didn't dedicate much time to the filming of Yellowstone Season 5 Part 2, and despite how great of a track record he has when it comes to making good changes to Yellowstone's story, the writers are still not going to give the star the ending he wants for John Dutton. That could also be because Sheridan's got the ending for the show planned, and it's the same original ending they thought up. The showrunner mentioned that he didn't consider Costner's ego when he wrote the finale, so it might not be up to Kevin's liking. But here's the thing. Costner's the one person who's got the best understanding of John Dutton after all. He's spent half a decade portraying him.
Inmate rejected me.
So, the star should have been brought to the writer's room when they were finalizing where his character would end up. The fact that Sheridan wrote it all without consulting Costner goes to show that he had little to no respect for the actor. Plus, he didn't like how Costner was trying to take over some creative liberty behind the scenes. Now, Kevin doesn't feel like John's ending is something he can stand by.
Things we lose to keep you fed.
And has even mentioned that unless he's happy with what the writers come up with, he might not even return to shoot the final scenes. It seems tough for the show to get a good ending without Kevin being there. But hey, maybe they'll work something out after all. So there you have it, folks. From the star refusing to show up to film Yellowstone unless he's happy with John's fate, to Kevin Costner demanding changes for the direction his character was going in, that was everything you needed to know about why Costner hated Season 2.